Hello and welcome to this first video on pine as bonsai. The pine tree is a staple of bonsai as an art, but the tree called pine is a wide and varied collection of trees, with some not even being a true pine species. Despite this, some of the most impressive examples of bonsai are a pine, and many beginners will look at one of these trees during the early part of their bonsai experience. An excellent opportunity for this is just after Christmas, when live trees and excess nursery stock can be found for very reasonable prices. Pine trees are a very difficult tree for a beginner. In fact, it's very strongly suggested that a beginner should start with something else first. They have slow growth throughout the year, which is followed by a strong flush of seasonal growth. Damage from wire takes a long time to heal. The branches are difficult to train after they've set. All of this is not to say that they cannot be worked on by a beginner, but they have quirks that may put off first time or early stage bonsai enthusiasts. You will find pine trees across the northern hemisphere, with a few examples found in the tropical parts of the southern hemisphere. They exist in semi-desert to rainforest terrain. This also means many pine species are able to survive in harsh conditions. Their use as a structural material has led to large plantations of pine trees in some areas. This has also led to a spread of different pine trees used in bonsai. There are generally two species used and sold as bonsai in Japan. These are the Japanese black pine and white pine. You may find that in your area this is not the case, with Scots pines, a relation of the white pine, being very popular in the local area. If your pine experiences 2 flushes of growth in a year, it is a black pine, whilst a single flush is indicative of a white pine. These two species provide a nice example of the best distinction in training pines as bonsai. Pine trees are generally an evergreen conifer that has a characteristic pine smell. They reproduce through seeds housed in a cone. Most will grow between 15 and 45 meters tall in the wild. They are long-lived, with some specimens hundreds to thousands of years old. The wild pine tree will have a rough, coarse bark, with some finer exceptions. The leaves are not true leaves, but needles that later form into branches. Pine trees are able to grow in any standard bonsai mix, but favor rich, slightly acidic soil. In fact, if you are growing figs, you can use the same soil mix. Just add a little more drainage to your pine tree mix. Watering is an important part of pine care. Neither species of pine like to have wet feet, neither do they wish to be in dry soil. You need to carefully avoid overwatering your pine. This is why you need a little extra drainage. It will keep the soil mix damp, but not wash out your fertilizer. Fertilizing is very important with pines. They are a very energy-intensive tree during the growth phase, where they can put on a lot of growth over a few short weeks. This can be up to half a meter without extra help, and when well cared for, up to a meter on sacrifice branches. This much growth obviously uses a lot of resources. During this time, you need to apply both a solid and liquid fertilizer. Solid fertilizer should be added monthly to the surface of the pot. Liquid fertilizer should be applied at least every other week. You begin this fertilizing routine between late winter and early spring. Continue it throughout spring into late summer. In autumn, start to roll back your fertilizer use with solid fertilizer every month and liquid fertilizer at least 2 weeks apart. If you live in a very cold environment, stop fertilizing over winter entirely. You need to have such an intense fertilizing schedule because of how much pruning you will be doing and how much growth the tree will make. What follows is generally only applicable to black and red pines that put on masses of new growth. White pines will be described in part 2 of the Pines as Bonsai series. Before pruning, you will want to decandle your tree. This will happen in late spring or the first week of summer. You want to try and defoliate as soon as your tree starts to get a flush of growth, as it will recover quickly. Assuming your tree is healthy, the process for this is as follows. Your tree will grow aggressively, which normally peaks at high summer. Your tree will put on 10 to 15 centimeters of growth, if not more, over the course of a few weeks. After several years, the tree's growth will drastically taper off. Each of these growth bursts will produce either a cluster of new growth or a pair of new growth. This video on pines will address the cluster pattern. Pruning begins in early summer. First, cut your branch back to the length you want. For compact branch structure, try to cut it as close to last year's growth as you can. This is normally about a centimeter, but you may be able to cut more off of the tree. This will cause a burst of shorter new needle growth. This should leave you with a section of branch that is covered with needles. If your tree is already at the right length, you can jump to the next stage. You wait several weeks and then begin removing these clusters of new or existing needles. This is called decandling. Take your tree back to a handful of needle pairs in a crown around the end of the branch. If you leave your tree with this small number of needles, it will help with repeating the process next year. It will also ensure more energy is put into these needles. Do not strip the branch of needles all the way back to the trunk, as leaving some needles along the branch towards the back will promote ramification. This will allow you to retain your desired silhouette year-round. When wiring your tree, try to do so in early autumn or early spring, before the tree begins to set, and this will be either before or after your candle pruning has been done. Try to wire new growth each year to ensure you get the best results and avoid breaking branches. Ideally, you want nice, short and sharp needles on your pine tree. In order to get these, the tree should be put outside in full sun. If you put it in partial shade or deprive it of any light, the needles will grow longer and they will be weaker. In order to ensure your pine tree is the healthiest it can be, place in full sunlight. If you are in a very cold area, you should bring your tree into a protected environment, such as a sheltered area, a greenhouse, or anywhere that it will avoid frost. Repotting is only done in response to growth. If the tree is growing poorly, it will need repotting. The rest of the time, you can leave the tree be. Repotting occurs roughly once every 2 to 5 years depending on the tree's age, with older trees requiring even less frequent repotting. Hopefully, knowing something about pine trees, you can make a better decision about gifting a tree, choosing your own, or has answered some of your questions. Another video will follow shortly, looking at other species of pine trees. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it interesting, consider liking, sharing and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions or suggestions below.